Hello again, Alex Wiseman here, talking about the social impact model. We just spent the last 15 minutes in the first part of the screencast really going through this page, this overview of what the social impact model was. One of the things that we didn't highlight, which I think we should highlight right now, and I'll make my pointer do fancy things so that I can show you, is that there is data input that happens here, and we shouldn't forget that. And there's also a feedback loop that happens here. So this group right in here that's offset with special color and arrows and all the other ways that you can make it look like it is somehow interactive should be, right? There should be some sort of empirical data that works to inform the operating model, the social impact strategies, and the performance and impact indicators. And those indicators then should form some feedback, should provide ways to re-envision what the operating model is and how the social impact strategies are working. So let's start working through these one by one, and let's tackle it right at the beginning, right here, social problem definition. Well, here's what we want to consider. We want to consider the market need. Now, I know that we are not in the business of education. We're more about social entrepreneurship. So why in the world are we talking about market need? Well, what we're really talking about is whether or not there is a social problem that needs to be solved. Right? And one of the ways that we do that is by providing a data-driven description of the social problem in its current context. I've given this example before in class. I'll give it again now. Hey, guess what? South Africa has the highest rate of HIV and AIDS infection in the world. That is a data-driven description of a real social problem in its current context. Current trends. It'd be good to have an overview of the current social, political, legal, and economic trends that are affecting your target social problem and your target social population as well. Right? So what is the context? That's what that's saying. What is really going on so that we understand the social, political, legal, and economic context that affects whatever your social problem is. Next, we've got root causes. Do you have a theory about why the problem exists and how it gets reproduced? So what is your theory about the root causes of the social problem based on the need, the trends, as well as literature and research? You should have some basic idea there. And you'll notice that if you're working in CIE 407, that on February 27th, one of the optional assignments is a conceptual framework. Boy, wouldn't that be helpful to have. Next is environmental landscape. What is a description of the approaches to the social problem by other organizations and the gaps that still remain? In other words, what's the competitive landscape? What are people already doing? This is part of your needs statement that you've been putting together for your proposal assignments, but it is also really important for you to think about who is already addressing your problem, because you don't A, want to repeat what else has already been done, and B, you want to complement what's already been done, right? You want to build on infrastructure or capacity that somebody else has provided. Next, you want to think about barriers. We talked about a SWOT analysis. Let's see if I can actually make this work. SWOT analysis in class last week or week before last. And the idea was that you could look at internal strengths and weaknesses and external opportunities and threats. Right? So this is a way of looking at those weaknesses and threats that would cause a challenge to the progress for for solving your target social problem within the context that you've just outlined above. And then finally, opportunity. Can you summarize how the above information frames an opportunity to achieve success and why your innovation is uniquely positioned to do so? Now, the reason why you need to have that opportunity is because social entrepreneurship usually involves some sort of risk. Right? There's always a risk of failure, or there's a risk of waste, or there's a risk that it won't be embedded enough, or that there's some risk that's out there. What you need to do is be able to use this information to talk about why there's more opportunity for success and less opportunity for that risk actually happening. So all of that, one, two, three, four, five, six things to think about. And what I'm asking you to do is provide a concise description of your target social problem, which begins to clarify your niche. And write it in one or two sentences. Not easy to do. But if you can define your problem within all of this context and all of this background information in one or two sentences, you will have achieved quite a bit. Because one, you will have articulated in a very straightforward and simple way what your social problem is. And two, you will have spent the time and the effort, which is very important, to actually understand what your social problem is, what the context for it is, what solutions have already been tried, what your opportunities and weaknesses are in terms of how you're going to address it, and you've laid that foundation. That's really important. Next, your vision of success. That sounds so important. Can you write a description of how the world will be different if you are ultimately successful in addressing a target social problem, and a description of your role in realizing that vision? Okay? So, one, how the world will be different if you're ultimately successful, and two, a description of your role in realizing that vision. How different in your role. Write that in one sentence. Next, social and economic impact indicators. These are, you'll remember, units of measurement that assess your long-term progress toward your vision of success and the overall success of your hypothesis. Whew. Well, what this does is it helps you ensure that your innovation's vision of success is grounded in a set of achievable yet ambitious targets. In other words, it's a way for you to operationalize your vision of success. If you've had me in class before, you will know that this is a word that we like to use. Operationalization means that you've taken an idea and you've made it something that you can empirically observe or measure or do. So what you should do here, remember we're talking about social and economic impact. Create a list of 3 to 5 indicators that will aid you in measuring progress towards your vision of success, but specifically related to the social and economic impact. Next, mission. Provide a description of your purpose, including your target, beneficiaries, activities, and expected outcomes. You can do that by answering the following as concisely as possible. And if you haven't already done a mission, or if you have already done a mission, check what your mission says against what you're going to do here, or think about answering these questions as a way to develop your mission. So think, who or what is your target beneficiary? Who's the population that you really want to help, that you want to benefit, that you want to solve a problem in? Second, what activities will be conducted in order to address the target social problem? What are you actually proposing that you do? And if there is one big thing that might have some sub-things, sub-activities that you do, that's probably best. One big thing, and then some supporting activities that go along with that. And then finally, what outcomes do you expect to achieve? What do you really hope is going to be the result of this? If you can articulate these, you're on your way. Now, what you want to do is combine the answer to the previous 3 questions into one statement. And if you can do that, that then is your mission. Remember who or what activities, and the outcomes. Put that together, you get your mission. We've talked about other ways in other classes of developing your mission that have been similar in their approach. So think about how your mission either reflects these 3 questions or how you can combine the answers to these 3 questions together to develop your mission statement. Next, operating model. This is the way in which your innovations activities work together to carry out the mission. So think about answering these questions. How do you envision your innovations' mission-based activities? The goal is to tell a story that explains how the activities work together to achieve the mission. By the way, this is what your proposal is, right? And it better be interesting. How do I get this to write? There we go. Interesting. Make that story interesting. Make it match the grant maker's need. Who makes up your target market? Who are the primary beneficiaries? How old are they? Where are they? What income level are they? Etc. If nothing else, do the trinity of diversity here. Is there a specific gender? Is there a specific race or ethnicity that you're working in? Is there a specific socioeconomic status? If you can answer these questions, it would help, right? Because it helps you think about who they are. And then in addition, you've got age and all these others. Next, what staff positions are needed to carry out your operating model? Right? We've been talking about experts and what people would actually do. This is really important. Who do you need to do this? So for the groups that are working on things right now, as far as I know, none of you live in Cambodia. And yet all of you are proposing things that would take place in Cambodia. So clearly there needs to be some way to get people either over there or to work with people who are already there. What are the positions that we need to carry out your model? Focus on what are the critical roles and responsibilities. For example, if you were proposing, which none of you are, but if you were proposing some sort of a school or community garden as a way to, for example, feed disadvantaged children that might be going to that school or live in that community, as a way to teach about earth science and biology and all sorts of things, and have that be a curriculum supplement, or three, as a way to involve the community in the work that the school is, right? I mean, the basic thing you would need, you probably need some sort of a person who's a gardener, right? Who oversees the garden. That would be pretty key. I mean, the students and the teachers and the community members would all be involved, but somebody has to arrange that. Somebody has to bring it together, and somebody has to know enough about gardening or agriculture or growing stuff to make that happen. What does your operating model cost? Right? When it all comes down to it, we want to know how much money you need. And it needs to be reasonable, not too little, not too much. What is appropriate for what you say you're going to do? And finally, how will you measure the performance of your innovation activities and your long-term impact? So we've got two things to measure here: short-term performance and long-term impact. As you move through let's say you're funded, as you move through your project or your program, you're going to be measuring how you're doing along the way. There's going to be continuous assessment or evaluation that you will plan into that. And if you haven't already thought of that, hey, guess what? You will plan into that. But you also have long-term impact that you're hoping to make, right? This is the social impact model. You're not hoping to just put something in place, do your thing, and then leave, and it all falls apart after a year or two. You want this to be something that is established. So how do you measure both the short-term and the long-term impact? Next, and then we'll stop, is this social for this time and then come back in another screencast. The next is the social impact strategies. These are the major actions that your innovation will take to carry out its mission and strengthen its operating model while working toward achieving your vision of success. What will your innovation actually do? And what action will it actually take? So it would be helpful if you could group or categorize the activities that you're suggesting in the operating model to state your strategy in broad terms rather than just the individual actions. So this is actually creating a strategy, right? We've already mentioned this, you've got goals, and then under that you've got objectives. Objective 1, Objective 2, Objective 3. These are stated in a way that's smart, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. All right, we got all that. But what is helpful is if you can do this, right, and you can talk about how these three objectives, which are activities themselves, relate back to that goal, voila, you've created a strategy for making a social impact. But you have to be able to articulate how that works together in order to call it a strategy. All right, we're going to take a break here. We're going to come back in the next screencast and talk about organizational and program performance indicators.